The following program is a production of the Fairfax Network, Fairfax County Public Schools.
Welcome to Community Keynotes Parent Resources. This program was recorded at the Emerging Minority Leaders Conference in Springfield, Virginia. The annual conference is offered by the Fairfax County Council of PTAs. Keynote speakers from Fairfax County Public Schools provide information about various resources the school system provides for parents and families. Our first topic is understanding cultural proficiency.
What we decided to do was focus on three cultural proficiency resources that are available to you as residents of Fairfax County and as members of the Fairfax County Public Schools community. The first resource we're going to share with you is the Cultural Competence video. And by the way, we're going to be using the term cultural proficiency and cultural competence pretty much interchangeably. There is a theoretical difference between the two, but it's very detailed and it's not important for this morning's session. So when you hear cultural proficiency or cultural competence, know that we're talking about the same thing. So we'll share some information with you about the cultural competence video. I will share some information about the office that I manage, Family and School Partnerships, and then we'll share information about the project that she manages, the Cultural Proficiency Project. Back in 2009, I was working in a department in Fairfax County Public Schools that no longer exists. Was the Department of Accountability. And one of my job responsibilities was to work with school improvement planning teams on their school improvement plans. And these folks would get around in a conference room and look at their data, and most often they were looking at their data grouped by the same student subgroups that exist in the No Child Left Behind legislation. As you know, there are student subgroups: white students, Hispanic students, black students, students with disabilities, etc., and look at specifically the achievement among and between those subgroups. What I noticed in the conversations that I was privy to is that when it came time to talking about the Hispanic student subgroup, there were very robust conversations about second language acquisition and ESOL levels. Similarly, when it was time to talk about students with disabilities, lots of talk about IEPs and providing accommodation. When it came time to talking about students in poverty, many Fairfax County Public Schools faculty and staff had taken training with Ruby Payne and had common language and knew the research about teaching students who come from families where there are economic struggles. I found that when it came time to talk about the black student subgroup, suddenly the room would get very quiet. And it was almost like a black cloud had entered the room and would just hover over the conference table. People were very concerned about saying things that might offend one another or saying things that maybe they felt they couldn't back up if they were questioned. And I became very disturbed by this. And one day I went home and I just kind of poured my heart out in some PowerPoint slides, and that became the genesis or the seed for the cultural competence presentation that I began doing around Fairfax County Public Schools. The presentation was very well received. It really seemed to resonate and hit a chord with the educators that I was talking with. And I began to not be able to keep up the live presentations, and so the presentation was videotaped at the Sprague Center. The videotape is available to you on the Fairfax Network. It now has a wonderful participants guide and facilitator's notebook. And very often when individuals, families, teaching staff want to get started on the cultural proficiency journey, we point them in the direction of the cultural competence video because that's a good place to start. It's a good video to view. It's divided into 8-10-minute segments so you can watch just a short segment at a time, and it's a good place to start questioning yourself and your own skills when it comes to cultural proficiency. The second resource that I'd like to share with you is the office that I manage, Family and School Partnerships, and very often I say that is an office that has cultural proficiency written all over it. The Office of Family and School Partnerships is a complex and dynamic organization that is multicultural and multilingual. It's comprised of about 60, almost 70 employees when you count the individuals we have working out in the field. And what all of the employees have in common is a passion for making sure that families, particularly those that are new to the Fairfax County area, are able to and gain the skills that are necessary to navigate navigate our huge public school system. There are 3 programs in particular that I'd like to highlight: our early literacy program, our Immigrant Family Reunification Project program, and something that we call the Welcoming Atmosphere Walkthrough. Family and School Partnerships has 5 distinct early literacy programs. The first is HIPPY, which stands for Home Instruction for Parents of Preschool Youngsters. The other 4 early literacy programs are programs where we work with parents in Arabic, in Spanish, and in Korean, and we launched this year for the first time our African Heritage Early Literacy Program, which is being offered at Riverside Elementary School. Family and School Partnerships also launched this year the Immigrant Family Reunification Project. Many of you know that over the summer, our airwaves and our newspapers were sharing with us very dramatic and difficult stories to listen to about unaccompanied youth, some of them as young as 3 years old, crossing borders from Central and South America into the United States, and then being reunited with their family, many of whom they hadn't seen for decades. I'm pleased to say that Family and School Partnerships saw this trend occurring and has put in place a training program and a support group for professionals who work with the families who are being reunited and the families themselves. Robin Hamby, who manages that program, is now getting calls nationally about what it is that we're doing, and we are thrilled that the project has become so popular and is really gaining ground in our schools, and our educators are really seeing it as an important part of making sure that students achieve. The last program that I'd like to highlight is our Welcoming Atmosphere Walkthrough. And again, I could list, we've got many, many programs and services that we provide, but in the interest of time, I'm just highlighting these 3. At the request of the principal, and I will say that once more, at the request of a principal, Family and School Partnerships will send a team of people out to a school and see whether or not that school has a welcoming atmosphere. Often it starts in the parking lot, and school staff members who come in and out of their school every day are surprised to learn that, hey, when you first come to your school and you see a no smoking sign, a no parking sign, and then a kind of a sarcastic sign that says, ring the buzzer here, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, that it doesn't exactly set a very welcoming tone. Members of the Welcoming Atmosphere Walkthrough team go into the front office and see how they're greeted by front office staff. They look at policies and procedures, and at the end of their walkthrough, they sit down with the principal and share with the principal all of the wonderful things that the school is doing to make families feel welcome, but also shares with that principal some things that the school might want to work on. So those are just 3 of the kinds of services that families and school partnerships provide. Again, we hope you'll visit our website or visit our display table during the course of the morning.
So the last resource that we'll highlight is the work that we're doing around the Cultural Proficiency Project. So this is a project that really is at first dedicated towards working with teachers. We know that every teacher wants to welcome students, wants to support students, and want to provide students with the opportunities to thrive in their own classrooms. And as our community becomes more diverse, the Cultural Proficiency Project is a resource that will help teachers build their capacity to serve a variety of students, no matter where they come from. And so in our work with teachers, we recognize, we're building from this framework of the International Center for Leadership and Education to talk about, in order to engage students, you need to have relationships, relevance, and rigor. And the folks who design this say that you start with relationships. Relationships help you make relevance possible, and relevance makes rigor possible. And so in our work, cultural proficiency we see as an essential part of making learning relevant for students and building those strong relationships that enable students to reach the highest goals. In our work with teachers, what we would do is we bring groups from schools and we have options for individual teachers to come, and we build on their knowledge and skills and engage people in conversations around the dimensions of cultural proficiency. So the first dimension that we start with is the personal dimension. As a human-to-human interaction between people, what are some elements of cultural proficiency that will happen as we interact with each other as people? The second dimension we look at would be the instructional dimension. As educators, if you have a culturally proficient mindset, what are some of the instructional practices that you may employ in order to serve students from a variety of backgrounds? And finally, we take a look at the organizational dimension, that beyond our own personal interactions, beyond the choices that we make in our own classrooms, how can we make our schools more culturally proficient in its practices and policies? And so, again, like Darryl, I apologize, I'm trying to give you a really quick overview of what we're trying to do. And so I'll share with you some of the objectives we have. And so, over the course of our professional development, and we're in our second year, and so there's a lot more that we see coming across the horizon, but here's what we're focusing on now. As teachers and educators engage with us, they collaborate with folks from their school, and one of the things that we look at is we're just reflecting on and learning more about cultural backgrounds, starting with our own cultural backgrounds and more about the cultural backgrounds of the students and families that we serve. The second thing that we work on, and many people already have this mindset, but we just really deepen the understanding that diversity is a positive thing for us, and that we work on communicating our appreciation for diversity in our interactions with our students and our families. Next, we go through looking at the research, looking at practices that are being used across the country that have been effective, and ask people to consider those practices that will provide the most opportunity for the most students, and making sure that we're not leaving any students behind. And the last thing is, although we look at some of these practices, it's not something what we do now, we do here and there. It's something that we do as a regular practice of day-to-day interactions with our students and day-to-day instructional activities. And so over the course of our professional learning, those are the 4 things that we hope that teachers will continue to grow in. We know it's a lifelong journey, and it's been very exciting to see teachers share with one another and learn from one another as we continue.
If you would like to review the Cultural Competence videos or Participants Guide, please visit this website. Our next topic is the Online Advocacy Toolkit for Parents.
Again, I'm here to introduce you to a new resource that's called the Advocacy Toolkit for Parents. And if you look on the screen, you'll see a blue box. And this is on the Fairfax County webpage. Now, this website was created by parents. Well, one of the foundations for the toolkit is that we believe that the success of every student depends on the active involvement of their parents. That's a firm belief that we have. But not every family has the information or a roadmap to guide them. And that's one of the purposes of developing the toolkit. So you can see on the blue box we have something called information at your fingertips, and it covers basic information that most parents would be interested in. And so, for example, if we can open up the box for health services. So again, we refer you to the direct source. So a lot of parents have questions about, well, why does my child need immunization by the 7th grade? Well, we try to put the information in a user-friendly manner such that you can find it. If you want information about other kinds of health issues, you can, again, scroll through and see where that is in the particular website. So if we can go back to the main menu. So, for example, if you want information about academic programs, tools to achieve academic success, which is the first one. And one of the things we tried to do is we tried to substitute videos for text. And also, many of these sources are in different languages. So they're in Arabic, Spanish, Korean, Vietnamese, Mandarin, and I'm maybe missing a few. But they're in 7 different languages, so you'll be able to easily access the information, okay? So in addition to that, we do a monthly feature on topics that are of interest to parents. So for example, we did a feature on summer school, and we tried to do it in such a timely fashion that you would have information on how to register for summer school, the importance of summer school, and where you can get additional information. Okay? So this is one of the features of the toolkit itself. So, in sort of wrapping up, there are three things I want you to remember. I want you to understand what resources are available to help you and your student at school and at home, how to navigate the pathways from kindergarten through high school on to college, and how to advocate for your students so they can reach their goal. Right now, we're working with parent liaisons, and we'd like to move to work with them at their particular school to help you fully use the toolkit. One of the things we find out is that you can make information available, but if you can't show folks how to use it, it really is not going to do any good. So at this point, we want to turnkey this process over to basically work with the parent liaisons at each individual school so that they can run sessions with parents to show them how to use the toolkit, how to navigate it, and how to get the information that they need.
To find the Parent Toolkit and additional information online, please visit this website. Coming up, we'll feature information about the Student Leadership Academy and resources for English learners and families. First, a few words from Dr. Monique Chisholm of the U.S. Department of Education about arts integration in our schools. Here is Dr. Chisholm.
At the Department of Education, one of our primary emphasis has been, during this administration, a focus on ensuring that all students graduate from high school prepared to enter college or to lead into a successful career path, so college and career ready. I actually live right here in Virginia, in Alexandria, and so I am not just being biased when I say that Virginia has been at the forefront of education progress for a number of years. So even before this national reform agenda came in place, Virginia was moving forward towards college and career ready standards, assessments, strong instructional practice, and so here in Virginia we have a lot to be proud of. But it's not enough to think of just the academic side of education. I firsthand know the importance of arts integration programs. I actually lived in Cincinnati, Ohio for a little while, and during that experience, it was at a time in my life, I was 14 years old. My family had just divorced, and so I was living with my mother and my sister, and our economic situation had changed dramatically. So we went from a very normal middle-class family living in Iowa to a low-income, not low class, because we had a lot of class, but a low-income family. And my mother was faced with the challenge of sending us to our neighborhood school, which is what we would probably call today a chronically underperforming school. And so she did her due diligence, and she found an alternative school, an arts school in Cincinnati. It was the School for the Creative and Performing Arts, a lot like FAME, but we didn't dance on the cafeteria tables. And my sister and I actually auditioned and were able to get into that school. And I say every time I have an opportunity that school literally changed and saved my life. It was because of the administrators, the teachers, the parents that contributed to the quality of education that I had and the experience that I had that I truly am the person that I am today. And it was that experience that made me see that education really is the pathway for success and progress. And access to education, high quality education systems changes lives. Because I saw firsthand that the kids that I was friends with in my neighborhood didn't have the same opportunities that I had because I went to a different school. And so I can speak firsthand about the testament of the importance of not only high quality education systems, but the importance of an arts integration program. I wanted to share just a quick couple of statistics with you about the importance of arts education. There's a number of longitudinal studies that have been done looking at programs that integrate arts-rich environments in school and the outcomes for students. And we see three significant outcomes. First and foremost, we know that schools that have an arts-rich environment see higher GPAs from their students. We also see a higher graduation rate, particularly for low-income and minority students. We see a higher enrollment in college, and then we also are able to track students, and students that have been exposed to an arts-rich environment actually graduate from college at a higher percentage rates than other students. And so we can't let go of the arts. And one of the things that I try to remind people when I go out and speak is that our Title I program actually is a great resource to think about the inclusion and integration of arts in our schools. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act, or ESEA, which will be 50 years old in just a couple of months, actually identifies arts as one of the core content areas. And so, along with English and math and social studies and history, arts is one of our core areas, academic areas. So I encourage all of us to have conversations about what it means to have an arts-rich environment. When you think about artistic expression, it really is the universal language of diversity. If it's through singing, if it's through visual arts, if it's through dramatic interpretation, visual representation, it's a language that connects all of us to one another. And so it connects back to that central thing that we talked about this morning of cultural proficiency. So I'm so excited to be here with you today. Thank you so much for the invitation. You guys are doing wonderful work. I'm very inspired by the work that you're doing and will carry that back with me. And thank you so much for your time today.
And now back to more resources available to parents in FCPS. Our next topic is the Student Leadership Academy.
We're with you today to talk to you about a very exciting opportunity that's happening in our schools in Fairfax County that it revolves around a 30-week after-school program that's available for students with untapped potential and academic opportunities for them for after school, for an enrichment opportunity for them. And the program itself is available for 6th grade students. This idea was originated by the MSAOC committee, the Minority Student Achievement Oversight Committee. And the committee came together and was looking for opportunities for students in high poverty areas to be able to engage in an enriching and challenging after-school program.
We targeted 6th grade students. The committee felt, and we felt as we were looking at who we were going to target, that if we're waiting until 7th, 8th, 9th grade to target students for extra support, it's really too late. So we started looking at 6th grade with an eye on within these schools. When this is successful, we're even talking about how do we move down further to start this earlier. So we're starting with 6th grade students, and the target audience starts with Young Scholars students. If you're familiar with Young Scholars, it's a way to try and help students access advanced academics curriculum. Okay, so that's kind of our target first audience, but we also expanded it to look beyond that. Sometimes there are students within schools that aren't part of a Young Scholars program. They're the quiet student in the back of the room. They're the student who might be causing problems because they're bored, or because they don't feel appreciated, or because they've spent too many years thinking that they can't do something. So we asked teachers within those schools to form committees to select these students that comprised 5th grade teachers, 6th grade teachers, counselors, administrators, the group of people who really know these kids. And it's not so much about their test scores for this program, but who do you see as a leader? Who do you see as, with a little bit of extra support, could really do something outstanding? Who's in the academic middle, but you know that with some extra support could really advance? So that's our target audience for this program. We started with 2 cohorts for each of the schools, and each of those cohorts had 15 to 20 students. And they met for 1 hour weekly after school each week. So we had 2 instructors, and those instructors at those schools were really phenomenal. I mean, these are the instructors that we know believe in these kids. And they, like what we want to instill in the children, have a growth mindset about what these students are capable of. So one of the instructors contacted me probably a week even before the program started, and they had given out letters to the students inviting them to be part of this program. And she said she ran onto the bus at the end of the day to make sure the student had her letter. And she asked, like, what is this letter about? And she said, well, we really believe in you and we want you to be part of this leadership program. No one had ever told her that before. And this was something like just being invited to be a part of this made this huge difference for her. So when we were writing the curriculum, we were doing it with these things in mind. STEAM, which we just talked about, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And what we used as a foundation was computer coding. Computer coding is a 21st century skill. It's a high interest skill. It's something that could be very applicable in the lives of these students as we go forward. And it's also something that's not available in their regular curriculum during the day. So we wanted something that made sure that these kids came every day. Also, computer coding helps with these pieces around critical and creative thinking, problem solving, resilience, grit. When children are writing lines of code, they have to run them, and if their program doesn't work, they have to go back through all those lines of code and figure out where the mistake was. Sometimes we have kids who, if something doesn't work right away, they're done, right? This forces them to keep going back and start not only using what they know, but start to use each other as resources, problem solving on their own or as a group to figure out what went wrong and how they can make it work. So the coding is wonderful, but really what's the important piece there is that we're building resilience in kids and problem solving and asking them to think critically. So as you can see, it helps to develop that growth mindset I mentioned of the teachers. It's also a growth mindset for the students. If I keep working at this, I can figure it out. It's not that I just have to be born good at mathematics or engineering or whatever it is. If I work at it, it's something I'm capable of. And another big piece that we've put into this program is around goal setting and career exploration. So there's a program within the middle schools and high schools called Naviance, or Family Connections, in which students set goals, write resumes, track their courses, and we piloted it with our kids in these 2 elementary schools and the 4 this year. So these students spent time writing goals for themselves academically, but also for the projects that they were doing. They were exploring careers that they were interested, as well as colleges they would like to go to, or what kind of degrees they would need to take part in the careers that they liked. So a quick story about that. There were 2 girls who had started doing the resume writing and didn't know what the heading leadership meant. How do I fill out leadership? And once they got an understanding of what leadership meant, they actually started taking opportunities within church for volunteer activities and leadership there so that they could add it to their resume. We also made sure that there are links to the AVID program. If you're familiar with this, it provides supports to students to help them be successful. They're looking at underrepresented populations in higher education and helping to give them the academic supports as well as a peer group to help them be successful all the way through middle school, high school, and into college or whatever post-secondary education they pursue. And we also brought in, as Beth mentioned, support from Advanced Academics program, and we used that project-based learning to build our curriculum so that all of the students in this program were getting advanced academics curriculum. We also have guest speakers coming in. These students are minority individuals who are leaders within their communities and can be something for these students to look up to in terms of this is what is possible. These people are doing these wonderful and interesting things. They also go on college visits, at least 2 within the year. They work on building their resumes. And with the college visits, we hear things like, as they look around and see a diverse population within those college campuses, everyone can go to college. I didn't know it was for me. And we know that those students still need supports, but just the idea that this is something that I can do is really eye-opening for some of these kids. We also have a piece of parent involvement. Parents are brought in at the beginning of the year for a parent meeting. They come in to see the projects that the students are working on. They're invited to go along on the field trips as they are able. Some of them may not have never been at a college campus either. So how wonderful for them to go along with their kids.
For more information, please visit this website. Our next topic is ESOL services for English learners and families.
I'd like to give you a little bit of more of an understanding of immigration and the acculturation process of families so that you can better serve them. I'd like to talk a little bit about the programs that exist in this wonderful school system. How many of you are happy to be part of Fairfax County Public Schools? Yay. We have the best school system around. We really, really do, and we serve our children well. But there's a lot of work we still need to do, right? We're not perfect, but we are a good system, and we're built with people that really, really care about children, and because we know that children are the future of this country. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the steps that you can take to build parent leaders in your schools. According to a new population estimate, listen, I want you to really think about this. 500,000 Latino children will reach the age of 18 every year for the next 20 years. And that's just the Latino children. There's a lot of other immigrant communities, a lot of other people are turning. So we have a huge job to do. Those children have parents. And we know, I know with my 5 children, what I've had to do with my husband, who's wonderful here in the audience, what we've had to do to really, first of all, to look and determine the needs of each child. Not every child is the same, right? Some have some challenges, some have other challenges, some are really easy, some are really hard, and we have to be there for each one of them. And they are as successful as our involvement. If a child doesn't have parent participation, doesn't have support at home, it is incredibly difficult for them to have success in the school system. Very difficult, and especially if they're a minority, even more so. Especially if they live in poverty, or they don't speak the language, or they just got here. They don't know. So why do families migrate? Because they like it here? Because they'd rather live in the United States than in their own country? Poverty, conflict, social strife, economic hardship. Families make a huge sacrifice when they leave their homes, their families, their little towns, their farms. Huge. They come here and they still live in poverty, but a lot of them come because they want freedom. They want to live in a democracy. They don't want to live with fear. So they come here and there's a huge process of acculturation. They live marginalized and they live isolated lives. I have worked with Latino families for the past 15 years. And I can tell you, I have never met one that didn't hold promise, that was not a beacon of light. When I look at them and I look at the faces, I know that they have power. And I know if they have promise, they can fuel their children. So why do you think that building minority parent leaders is so important and relevant in our day? You know, it's a step system, the way I see it. It's not like you invite somebody to do something because you have these expectations, and then that person, just because you invite them, they're just going to be ready and do it. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. And it's not because they don't come. That doesn't mean that they're not interested, that they don't care about education, that they don't care about their children. I have never met a family who doesn't want a better education than they had and a better life for a child. I've never met a family who's made sacrifices, who have migrated from another part of the world so that they can have a worse life. Have you? No, right? So if they're not coming to our PTA meetings, and if they're not coming to the bingo night, and if they're not coming to the conference, why is it that they're not coming? Maybe we need to build a bridge. Maybe we need to hold them by the hand. If a PTA invites a parent who's a minority parent, it doesn't matter if they're immigrant, if they're not immigrant, but they're in a minority, they might not feel comfortable. They might have had experiences in their lives that don't make them feel comfortable with the system, right? So they might have felt like, nobody cares about what I say, why should I go? But if a PTA invites a parent, such as this one that I described, and says, oh, we need you to head up a committee for fundraising, because we want to buy a climbing wall for our gym, and you're going to have 3 or 4 people under you, and you're going to have to just let them know what you do. Do you think that parent is capable of doing that? That parent's not even capable of going into the office and registering their laptop in the computer in the traditional sense and putting in their volunteer hours because they're not computer literate. That parent doesn't speak the language. That parent hasn't been acculturated. They need to have a step system. I'm going to very quickly go through these slides about the different programs that we have in Fairfax County, because Daryl Craig mentioned some of the programs that come from our office. One of them is the Early Lit program. We have it for Hispanic, Korean, Arabic, and African heritage families. We have the Family ESOL program, which is a free English classes for immigrant families. It's beginning English, but it has a whole family component. It fosters independence with families and teaches them how to navigate the systems of the school, of health care. It's a fabulous program. We also have the Hippie program. I know Elizabeth Bruzon is here, and she's been introduced already. That's a fabulous program that helps mothers with children that are 3 and 4 years old. They have a home visitor, and they go and work with the child to get them school ready for school readiness and early lit program. And then we have the PEP program, which is Parents as Educational Partners, which is another program that comes out of Title III, that it kind of introduces parents to the school system. So the parents come into the school and they learn about what do you do when your child is sick? What are the norms? What are the routines? How do you call the office? What do you say about attendance? How come I can't take my child for 5 weeks back to my country? Why have they been dropped out of the system? They don't understand. Those kinds of things. The Early Literacy program is very dear to my heart because I started the Early Literacy program in the year 2000. We started with a very tiny little program where I was one of the teachers. I hired another teacher. The curriculum was 10 topics. Now it's 80. It was only for Hispanic families. We only had 10 topics. We met 10 classes. It had no interactive activities, no early lit. We had child care for the kids. Now, this year in 2014-15, we will do 32 programs. And it will include Korean-speaking families, Arabic-speaking families, African heritage, and Latino families. Huge. In the year 2008, I was working with a group of moms, which some are here. Hello. We were doing our little thing, our early lit program in a school. And when the program ended in May, they begged to have a program in the summer. And I didn't have any money for the program in the summer. So I said, no, we can't. You're going to have to wait till September, October. They begged so much that I said, okay, fine. You can get the program, but you're going to have to teach it yourself. So there were 8 moms interested. I pulled 8 topics out of the curriculum. I said, if I will give you the program, and I will be a fly on the wall. I'm not going to help you. I'm going to be observing. We'll do it in August for 8 sessions, twice a week. I'll give you the materials. I'll give you the boombox, the music, the crayons, the scissors, everything that you need. If you promise to teach a lesson, everyone will take a lesson, then they will teach it. And so they said yes. And that's how it started. So while they were doing it, I did an interview with each mom. That's where I got the material for the curriculum of the leadership program now. And I found out that every single one of them had the same challenges. When we talked about self-esteem, they cried. I'm sad. I am overweight. I am not pretty. I don't feel good. I'm sad all the time. When we talked about goals, no one had any goals. When we talked about dreams, what were their hopes and dreams? They hadn't even thought about their hopes and dreams. They had no idea about what is leadership. Somebody earlier today mentioned leadership. Leadership, what's that? They mentioned somebody like Mother Teresa, like Gandhi. Those were leaders. But leader myself, I can't be a leader. I don't know what that is. And so it was very interesting to me. It was like I had come from doing something completely different in my past life before I started working with Fairfax County Public Schools. And so I was like, I'm amazed. All of these women across the board said the same thing. So it's taken 6 years since that 2008. And I started developing topics of discussion and getting groups together at the different schools in the summers. In the year 2011, 2012, we decided that we would put the curriculum embedded into the early lit curriculum. And so that every parent that took the early lit would graduate as a leader by the second week of December. It's a 9-week program, 18 sessions, 36 hours of instruction, and every parent, we were going to empower them. Another request from the parents that had children since they were 3 years old in the early lit program, and now these kids were rising 7th graders. So I've been working with them, for 7 years, 6, 7 years. So they came up to me and said, Micheline, what are you going to do for us next year? We're going to Luther Jackson. What are we going to do there? What kind of programs exist there? That was in maybe October, November of 2013. So I went up to see the principal at Luther Jackson and said, I have a proposal. I have a request from some parents. They would like to have some sort of leadership program. I have experience with building leadership programs at the elementary school level. I'd like to bring them here. I already have a captive audience. I have 8 moms that would like to be leaders. Will you let me launch a leadership program? And she did. It was wonderful. So we launched a pilot last year. It had 5 components. We did 16 hours of leadership training, 8 hours of technology, because that is the biggest gap between the minority parents. There is no technology, so once they get to middle school, they fall off the cliff. Talking about building a bridge. They fall. Everything comes via email. Their progress reports come via email. And if these parents don't have technology, they can't use blackboard.com, they don't know how to read a progress report, there is no way they can support their children. So we gave them technology. Then we gave them parenting workshops regarding adolescent behavior, which is very important because, kids change from 5th, 6th to 7th grade. Then we created a group for leaders, and then we set up a volunteer system. There are so many things that you can do with your parents, I think that we need to shift the paradigm from dependency to independent, from cultural survivors to cultural learners, and from cultural connectors to cultural leaders. I think that the children, like I said, are the future, and the parents are the future as well, and I think everyone here in this audience, I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I think that everyone in the audience here, if you just open up and you find a creative way and work with your schools, you've got to have buy-in from the school. You cannot do it by yourself. You got to have buy-in from the school, from the administrators, to the counselors, to the ESOL teachers, to the parent liaisons. You have to find a space to meet with 6, 7, 8 women. I say women, no offense, gentlemen, but for the most part, it's the women who are taking care of the children, and they can come to the classes. And you start with a little group, but it's so powerful. You can palpitate it, you can feel it. And then it grows. I mean, look at Luther Jackson. Luther Jackson, we have like 100 people in the database. We're meeting regularly on a monthly basis. And they're excited about what they're going to do.
For more information, please visit this website. This has been Community Keynotes Parent Resources. We hope you enjoyed this look at a few of the many resources available to FCPS parents and families. For more information about available programs and supports, inquire with your school office or visit this FCPS website. The Fairfax County Council of PTAs also has a wealth of information for parents, so check out their website as well. If you would like to know more about the Community Keynotes series, please visit the Fairfax Network website at www.fcps.edu/Fairfax Network.